And I think the latest real credit to a lot of what he's doing is to inspire a next generation of Indians and others around the world. As life and musical journey is now getting taught in the 7th standard of English textbooks in India. So, Ricky, welcome. Great to have you here, and really, so proud of what you have achieved, and what you will continue to do, from here on. And I think the idea is to see how this energy, this individual excellence that you have demonstrated, of course, through your collaborations. How do we make that infectious for India? As India emerges, over the next 25 years as a world leader, as Viksit Bharat, as our Prime Minister likes to call it, a developed India, where we take hundreds of millions, out of poverty, get them into empowered positions around the world, and I think it's a great opportunity, for us to do that. And, to begin with, maybe what we can do is, just really look at how do you see, the next 25 years? You've been an achiever, you're a role model. What's your wish list? What's your vision, for the India of 2047?
So, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's always great to chat with you. And so when it comes to India's vision, the thing is that I do not know much about, about finances or economy or, or GDP. These are all terms that are foreign to me. So I can speak more from like a holistic point of view and more from a naive perspective, from my own perspective. But obviously, I would love to see India have a seat at, the table when it comes to the most powerful nations in the world. That is what my dream would be. And we already see that happening. We saw that happening with the G20. And I also saw that firsthand, with the United Nations General Assembly just a week ago. So India always used to, I've always seen in the past that India used to be a country that used to always sit in the sidelines and, and not participate in intergovernmental decisions and meetings and stuff like that, and just go with the flow. And now I see that, India is not only participating in these intergovernmental decisions, but taking strong leadership. And I saw this at the UN General Assembly last week. There was this beautiful event that was organized where, we had Mr. Jaishankar at that particular event, and there were leaders from, various countries like Bhutan, from Guyana, from the Maldives, from Mauritius, from Cameroon, from, Jamaica, Trinidad, all of these different countries. And it was amazing to see all of these leaders go up on stage and, and praise where India is right now. And, and the fact that India has reached a certain status right now on the international stage, and India's taking all of these countries along with them, and ensuring that everybody has got a seat on the table, especially when it comes to the global south. And I was also at the, the French state dinner, which President Macron had organized in honor of Prime Minister Modi ji when he had visited France. And I was very fortunate to sit right next to them, so I was sitting down, then right next to me was President Macron, and right next to him was Prime Minister Modi. So the three of us sat together for about 2 hours at the dinner. And it was amazing to see the amount of friendship that the two of them had, and a genuine friendship, talking about the food, talking about, the dinner itself, talking about, various international topics. And I was privy to those conversations because I was sitting down right next to them. And, President Macron, 2 times during the dinner, he held my hand and he was telling me that, I can't believe it that, the last time we had a dinner in the Louvre, and we were in the Louvre for that dinner, was in 1957 when the Queen had come down, and, and right now we are having a dinner at the Louvre when your Prime Minister is here. Same thing with the World Yoga Day. Yes, I've never seen that many people at the United Nations headquarters. I was there at the World Yoga Day when Prime Minister Modi was there, and I've never, as I told you, never seen that much of a crowd over there and that much of enthusiasm for an event at the United Nations, and the enthusiasm as soon as Prime Minister Modi walked in. So what I'm trying to say is that for me, to answer your question, I do not have like a strong vision when it comes to what India should be, but I feel India is definitely going in the right direction, and we should be seeing more and more of this, and rising in an exponential way.
No, I think, you talk of this people to people connect, right? I think that's right from the leadership with Prime Minister Modi to everyone else who is now being able to, touch the lives of people around the world, bring about the importance of India as a country. And, no two ways about it, Ricky, we have the world's largest youth population, and I think this is only going to expand and grow, from here on. And I think it's that people to people connect. that will really change and shape, the world. And you yourself, both as a musician, as an environmentalist, truly believe in this collaborative nature of touching people, in different ways. So maybe share some thoughts around that, and maybe also, Ricky, it'd be great to, to understand your journey, right? From a young musician to where you are, I know a lot of this had to do with global understanding, exposure. Take us a little bit through your journey, and how do you see this strengthening?
Sure. And just adding to what you just said about the previous question, I would say that, with India, the kind of population that we have and the kind of footprint that we have all over the world, I think we not only need a leader for India, but we also need a leader. We need a global leader, for our country. That's what we require, and that's what we are seeing right now. And I hope that gets exemplified more and more. But about my journey, of course, that's a very long story, so I'll try to keep it as short as possible. So ever since I remember, I've always been two things. I've always been a musician and an environmentalist, two pillars that have pretty much dictated my whole life and every single life decision that I've ever made. So, while my classmates and my brother and my friends were more into, the visual mediums, like, they used to watch a lot of television and cartoons and video games. For me, the center of my universe was always my music system. My father had this huge music collection that I would listen to all the time. And also he had a couple of musical instruments at home, even though he was a doctor. I mean, he is a doctor and he was a doctor over there. And he had these musical instruments because he must have thought that at some point in time he'll probably learn them, but he never did. So I picked up these musical instruments. There was a piano, there was a guitar, there was a small keyboard, and I was initially self-taught, but of course later on in life I took on a formal education in music. But it was through music that I found a deep connect with nature, and it's very difficult for me to explain how that happened. But for me, music and nature has always been one and the same. Of course, now I can sort of explain it, because at the end of the day, how did music start? Music started off as sounds from nature, sounds of the birds, sounds of the animals, sounds of the trees. And then we humans started taking objects from within nature, like bamboo flutes and, and boxes of seeds as percussion instruments, or animal skin as percussion instruments, or drums and things like that. And, so music and nature has always been one and the same. So I started off my musical career as doing commercials for television and radio. This I started off at the age of 18 or 19, while I was in college. And then, so that's when my professional career started. And I did music for a whole lot of commercials for pretty much every brand everywhere in the world, whether it is Google or Microsoft or Airtel or Vodafone or Levi's or Lee, McDonald's, Burger King. You name the brand and their competitor, I was making music for them in every part of the world. Did more than 3,500 commercials in a span of 13 years. I was pretty much the most successful at doing that in the whole of Asia. And then it sort of struck me after doing that for 13 years that these big brands understood the power of music, so much so that, they're ready to spend a few $1,000s on me to actually create a piece of music for them to sell a product, because they're always trying to sell something. And not only that, they're ready to spend a few $1 million to actually air that music on television and radio. So, and because it is all because they understood the power of music, for not only communicating a message, in their case, a message of sales, but also for retaining that message deep in the head of a listener. So that is what inspired me, that I feel so strongly about, about so many things, especially when it comes to the environment and climate action and species and conservation and sustainability and things like that. So that is when I decided that I need to harness the power of music, and I need to create music for, in my own small way, to make this world a better place. So I started doing that. And then, of course, my 16th album won me my first Grammy Award. And then one life-changing incident that happened to me, of course, the Grammy Awards itself was a life-changing incident. My first Grammy Award, I won it when I was 33 years old. But then after that, Prime Minister Modi had called me for a meeting. And I ended up going for this meeting, and I thought it would be a 5-minute photo op, but it ended up being an hour-long discussion where we were discussing about the environment. He knew about my role with the United Nations. He was talking to me about that. Then he told me that he was going to be visiting the climate change conference later that year, the COP21. And he showed me his speech, and we discussed about it. And then we decided to make an album which featured musicians from all over the world. And he said that if you make this album, which is a truly inclusive album with musicians everywhere in the world, which speaks about climate action, I will launch it over there at the climate change conference. So that's what I did. And he encouraged me at that meeting that, you feel so strongly about the environment, you feel so strongly about social impact around those areas, So, why not dedicate your life and your music just to this one purpose and stop everything else? So I left his office with complete conviction that this is exactly what I'm going to do, because when the leader of your country gives you advice, then you end up taking it very seriously. So I took it very seriously, and that's what happened. Since I left his office, every single piece of music that I've made right now and every single music that I make in the future is going to be about social impact and about the environment, and that's my life right now.
No, I think what you mentioned is so touching, very similar, similar conversation back in 2008 when we were envisioning what India could be in 2022 in its 75th year, a 2.5-hour conversation. And Ricky, that time CK Prahlad, myself, and Prime Minister Modi, then the Chief Minister of Gujarat, spent 2.5 hours imagining the future of India and what it could be in 2022, and today, strengthening that to what it can be in 2047. I think it's so important to get alignment around multiple stakeholders to really see outcomes that are tangible, right? And I think, your emphasis on environment and music and, the symphony and the harmony of nature, which actually in some shape and form drives the world, that you see the same harmony in music, is such a powerful, theme, so to say, for, many others to understand and appreciate deeply. Because I think that the harmony and that symphony is there in every aspect of the universe, is there in nature, is there in each one of our lives. It's just, I think, up to each one to be able to discover that. And I think your message through this platform, will not only enable people in India, but around the world to do it. And India's role, in really, making that happen. So, it's interesting because when we say there will be a little bit of India everywhere in the world over the next 25 years, like you say, Indianness inside, right?
Yeah.
You see that, that Indianness, that thing about you that's about Indians, that you see really percolating, in the world today over the next 20 years?
So I would say that it's difficult to explain it in words, but I would say that what I'm trying to do is basically that trying to make Indian art forms and especially musical forms more and more popular. Because in India, of course, you've got the classical forms of music. That is, you've got the Hindustani classical and the Carnatic classical forms of music. But what predates that is basically the tribal musicians, and the folk musicians. That sort of predates even the classical forms of music. So for me, I believe that that a lot of these folk forms are traditions which have been passed down orally from generation to generation. Like, for example, the Bowls of Bengal. I had actually created a documentary on them. We spent about 4 years making that documentary. And the reason why I made that documentary was that I was very fascinated by the traditions of that particular musical form, because it's a 1,000-year-old tradition. The Bowls of Bengal, it's a 1,000-year-old tradition. And the reason why it started was that these were people who were suffering from being of a lower caste, and they wanted to get outside of the caste confines. And the way that they thought they could do that was that if they had a direct connection to God rather than going through somebody, if they have a direct connection to God, and they decided that their way of a direct connection to God would be through, through their voice and through their singing and through their music. So they started this particular tradition where they led cashless lives, nomadic lives, where they would travel from village to village. They would sing for their food, sing for a cup of tea, sing for a place to stay in the evening. And, and their pathway to God was through their voice. Now, the thing is that there are a few of these people who still exist who do not use the Baul form of music as a genre, but they actually lead they are very true to the overall tradition itself, and they lead the life of being a nomadic Baul. So that's why it is very difficult for us to find them, and that's why it took us 4 years to make the documentary where we made this. Second thing is that I constantly collaborate with tribal musicians, especially tribal farmer musicians, because that fascinates me. Because they have got songs that have been passed down. Some are said for even 3,000 years. And I, especially in northern Andhra Pradesh, in Odisha, in the Northeast, I collaborate with these farmer musicians, these tribal farmer musicians, and I sort of document their songs. Their songs are about coexistence. Their songs are about harvest. Their songs are about purity, about all the good stuff in life, about health, about how important nature is for our own survival. So all of these beautiful songs, I record with them, I collaborate with them, and I try to put them out, try to get a lot of, international attention to these songs. And of course, when you talked about harmony and you talked about, the way India is, as a country, I think you may have seen that version of the national anthem that I had done this year. It was basically with a 100-piece British orchestra, that is the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. And the reason why I did that, the main reason why I did that thing where I conducted a 100-piece orchestra performing a national anthem, was that I wanted to record this with a symphony orchestra, simply because if you look at a symphony orchestra, and I've recorded with multiple symphony orchestras all over the world, and every time I look at a symphony orchestra, I wonder, that you have an instrument which is like a violin, which is a soft instrument. And then you have an instrument like a timpani, which is a loud percussion instrument. Then you have a harp, which is a soft instrument. You have a trombone, which is a loud instrument. You have all of these. You have a piano, then you have a bassoon, you have a euphonium, all of these various instruments. Now, all of these instruments are not trying to be each other. A violin is not trying to be a timpani is not trying to be a harp is not trying to be a piano. All of them are maintaining their unique identities. They're maintaining their unique philosophies and what they are and their sound. But yet when all of them play together, they somehow work, they play together in beautiful harmony and they sound amazing, So none of them are trying to change their ideology, but yet all of them sound together amazing. And this is what reminds me of India. Every time I watch a symphony orchestra, it reminds me of what India is. That everybody can have their own ideology, everybody can have their own philosophy, but somehow the country works together. So that's the reason why I did it. But of course, there was subtext to the whole thing because it happened to be a British orchestra. So, so it was like, after 200 years of ruling us, the British are performing our national anthem, which is also justified as a narrative. But nevertheless, that was my reasoning for actually doing this. And it was beautiful to see a symphony orchestra, a large symphony orchestra playing our Indian national anthem.
No, yeah, you're right. And it's exactly the 75th year of Indian independence. We have an Indian origin prime minister in England. There's so much happening. I think India's, position in the world, Indians, the way they are shaping themselves, to get the respect, from global society is completely transforming itself. And I think it's only, as we said, going to, improve from here on. Ricky, we need many Rickies to be able to take this thing out. What you were just talking about, this tribal music and, the way, the ethos, the understanding. There's so much richness, right, that we have, within India. That can not only impact, our soft power in the world, but actually transform lives, right? And I know, you're a firm believer through your music and through, your environmental activism, so to say. We really want to see a transformed planet, transform people, transform, kind of a world. So how do we really take this out, at scale? What can we do as a country? What can we do, as industry? Is there a multi-stakeholder role? See that shape up. And, you work with brands, you understand, how they think. Is there something that industry, art, music, government all can do together to unlock the true potential of this opportunity?
No, true, because if you look at India, India has got, India has an ancient culture, ancient traditions, and a lot of these traditions and cultures and, and even the spiritual forms are represented through music. And I think music can play an extremely important role when it comes to soft power. Because when it comes to music globally right now, the problem is that right now, when it comes to music globally, the Western forms of music, whether it's the classical musical forms or the pop musical forms, are considered to be mainstream. So that's like the neutral form. That is like the mainstream form. And anything from India is considered to be niche, or it's considered to be exotic, or it's considered to be ethnic, or it's considered to be like world music, that kind of a thing. Whereas, to be honest, more people listen to the Indian forms of music than the Western forms of music, simply because of the population and the diaspora that India has got. But nevertheless, Indian musical forms are not treated with the kind of respect or the mainstream respect that, the Western forms are treated. So I feel that this is a huge opportunity for us in India to actually showcase Indian musical traditions as being mainstream to the world. And this requires a lot of effort, because mainstreaming of something is not something that can happen automatically or through a critical mass. It needs to happen very strongly with a lot of investment. It needs to happen with, with a lot of push and, with a lot of even political will, if I may say so. And because all of this music from India if you think about it, it's got beautiful themes of kindness, of empathy, of coexistence, and as I mentioned, when it comes to the tribal forms of sustainability, of coexistence with nature, about about cyclical economy, it's a circular economy. Like a lot of these ancient tribal songs actually speak about that. Also speaks about how. Like for example, there was this conference that I was at the United Nations a couple of years ago, and over there, they were speaking about the Save the Tiger campaign, and they were talking about that. A scientist over there was talking about the fact that a tiger is an apex predator. So the Save the Tiger campaign is not just about saving the numbers of the tiger, but if a tiger population increases, that means that the overall ecosystem is working well, because it means that the tiger has got enough deer, and and the deer has got enough foliage, and there's enough groundwater for everybody, and there is less human intervention, there's less poaching, so the whole overall ecosystem is working. And then I had to butt in and I had to say that that 5,000 years ago, the Mahabharata had this particular passage in it which says that that the tiger cannot exist without the forest, and the forest cannot exist without the tiger. So this is actually available in the form of song. So the thing is that this is what the world can learn from. So I feel that mainstream of music, it definitely needs a lot of effort. It needs a 360-degree approach, because it's got immense potential in changing the narrative when it comes to India. But it does require a lot of push, and of course, it's not just music. It's also yoga. It's Ayurveda, basically preventative healthcare. Now people are looking at India. Because previously people used to look at all of this, Ayurveda and preventative healthcare from an Indian perspective to be more like mumbo jumbo and things that do not have scientific backing and all of that stuff. But now people are realizing that, that rather than reactive, preventative healthcare is the way to go, and holistic health is the way to go. And then even if you look at food, one last thing that I'll talk about food is that from personal experience, the first few times that I started traveling to America frequently, when I just got out of my teenage years, when I started making music professionally over there, the thing is that I noticed that when you go to a restaurant or even like a KFC or something like that, it's a whole lot of meat, like a bucket of meat, and just a sliver of bread and a little bit of vegetables on the side. It's a steak, it's a large steak, and it is a little bit of vegetables. And that's not a sustainable diet at all. I'm not even talking about health over here. I'm talking about sustainable for the planet, because meat is such a polluting industry. And the thing is that it's not a sustainable diet, to have this kind of a thing. And if you look at India, even the people who eat meat in India, they have whatever chapatis and rice and all of that stuff. They have some vegetables and a little bit of chicken or a little bit of meat on the side. So basically the Indian dishes, and even when you look at millets, for example, millet is a super crop because it's good for the planet, it's good for our bodies, it's a very nutritious food, and it was part of our culture. But then slowly, of course, through invasions, it changed into rice and it changed into various things, changed into other grains. But millet is absolutely amazing. So why not mainstream our food? Why is continental food and American diner food called mainstream food and said to be the neutral food, when it comes to burgers and steaks, and and continental food from Europe is considered to be regular food that everybody eat, and everything else is a cuisine. Indian food is a cuisine. So I think Indian food and Indian cuisines are the most sustainable diets possible for the planet. So why not mainstream that? So I think all of this requires a lot of effort, and I think industry can play a very important role in mainstreaming all of this.
No, truly, I think this is the 25-year opportunity to India of 2047, right? How do we see, whether it is food, whether it's our preventive health, and it's interesting you talk about this, Ricky. It's not only about the food, it's about, an individual's relationship with food, right? I think the moment you shift to that, right, you're talking of an introspection, you're talking of, way of life, you're talking of a transformative behavior, I think, and that's probably India's biggest export to the world, right?
And it's our relationship with our food and also our relationship with our fiber.
Yeah,
so that's the way it is. Our relationship with our clothes, our relationship with our food, because everything needs to be grown, and there's land usage, and there is strong environmental impact when it comes to these aspects.
Yeah, and on sustainability, because you're such you've got such clear views, on the environment, on sustainability, on climate change. What do you think are the 2 or 3 areas, that, the world needs to constantly focus on? I mean, today there's innovation happening around renewable energy. There's, focus happening around many of the things that we've discussed. But if you were to prioritize, that the must-dos, right, without which the world, we cannot solve this problem, what do you think those are?
So I would say that, of course, when it comes to all the environmental problems, the overarching issue above everything else is climate change, because that is the biggest, the biggest existential threat that we've ever faced on our planet. And I believe that. Now, the thing is that I cannot speak in terms of scientific data, nor can I speak in terms of what is the best form of renewable energy, or what is the way to go, because for me, I do not have the considerations in my mind when it comes to doing things to scale and stuff like that. That is something that I would leave to the scientists to talk about. But what I can speak about is mainly from an Indian perspective, that when it comes to India itself, when it comes to our path to sustainability, I think it needs to be very inclusive. That is the most important thing. Because when I started off as an environmentalist and an outspoken environmentalist as a teenager, for me, it was everything was do or die, and everything was all or nothing. Everything was black and white, that, stop this, stop that, and let's not do this. Let's put a dead stop to something. But then later on, as I grew older and hopefully a little wiser, and also when I traveled the length and breadth of India, I realized that, when I started especially spending a lot of time in rural India, and I traveled a lot, I realized that in India, you can classify every problem into 2 large buckets, a problem of survival and a problem of thriving. So that is what it is at the end of the day. And the environment and climate change is looked upon, unfortunately, as a problem of thriving rather than a problem of survival. Because the problems of survival are the more immediate things, like poverty and hunger, education, malnutrition, gender inequality, gender violence, innovation, water, sanitation. All of this stuff is looked upon as problems of survival. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the narratives that the West puts out, when it comes to climate change, cannot work in India. We have to have our own solutions to our own problems. Like, for example, the Western narrative of, let's consume less of everything. That's what everybody say. But if you go to a rural area where a person is living in complete poverty and you tell them okay, let's consume less of everything, they're going to turn around and say, I don't have anything to consume in the first place. And same thing with, the narrative of let's make a better world for our future generations. But what about people who do not have a good standard of living right now? Because most of the environmentalists in the West feel that, everybody in the world has got a facility of flicking on a light switch and a light comes on, and a light turns on, and that's not the case in the global South. So we in the global South need to have our own solutions to our own problems. And we need to understand that everybody's got their dreams, everybody's got their own aspirations, and we cannot leave people behind in this quest for sustainable development. We have to take everybody forward together. And that is going to be really important. And of course, there are always, since I'm a communicator, there are always 2 ways to communicate things. What I widely call as, the one way to communicate things is the Greta Thunberg approach, which is basically shaming people into action, which is also very effective at times. And the second approach is basically using love, making everyone fall in love with the natural world. And hopefully through that love, getting people to, getting all of us to, to conserve, sustain, and protect our planet, and that what I call the David Attenborough approach. So that's what. So basically, I've chosen the David Attenborough approach, but I do not want to discount the Greta Thunberg approach. But I do believe that it's got a very short-term appeal, simply because it does not. A lot of people get turned away rather than get drawn in. When it comes to that kind of messaging. But it does help at times, when it comes to, shaming governments into action or shaming corporations into action and things like that. But nevertheless, for me, the way to do it is the David Attenborough approach, where, that at the end of the day, we as human beings will only protect things that we love. We'll only love things that we understand, and we'll only understand things that we are taught. So that is why I think education becomes extremely important. And positive reinforcement becomes really important. And
go ahead. Sorry.
Lastly, what I wanted to talk about is the life mission of Prime Minister Modi, because that I think is quite a game changer in my opinion. Because the thing is that everybody talks about changing the world, but we very rarely talk about changing ourselves. And that's not because we're evil people. It's simply because the way our systems are built around us, we do not believe that we are significant enough, to bring about change. But all that we need to do is make small, tiny, incremental changes within our own lives. And that's all that matters, because once we change ourselves, then the world changes. And that's what we need to do. We need to bring about behavioral change. And that's what the Life Mission talks about, that, that we need to follow. We need to do away with the use and throw economy that we are getting so used to. And we need to embrace more of a circular economy. We need to reuse everything. We need to buy things with a lot of deliberation, with a lot of mindfulness, with a lot of thought. And the whole paradigm of whatever I can buy, waste, and use is what I can financially afford should change to what the planet can afford, So rather than just buying things indiscriminately because we can afford it and then waste it, we should always think about what the planet can afford rather than what we can financially afford. So so I think the Life Mission is quite a game changer when it comes to bringing about a more environmentally conscious society.
No, I think this individual transformation that you're saying and the role that each person can play. We've been propagating something called the individual social responsibility. While we say corporates, we talk of others. It's ultimately a composition of individuals who are going to go out there and make the difference. And why not start with yourself? Also the aspects, Ricky, that you're talking of, love, etc. These are human emotions at the core. Right, which is there in every human being. It's just that it's so cluttered with so many other things, which have led to the necessities of life not being fulfilled, that one is not able to tap into that, that source of energy or that source of compassion and love, which is there 24/7 otherwise, right? And I think opening that up, seeing how to use that approach, right, to build about a stronger and greater understanding of where the planet is, what will be our role in it, and how through our individual little changes we can shape those outcomes. Nothing could be more powerful compared to that. So what's your advice to individuals and to people to do that?
So I would say that everybody has to find their own path towards it. What I can talk about is what I do within my own life. So within my own life, there are 4 things that I do. When it comes to being more environmentally, conscious. One is that I at any given point, I don't subscribe to fast fashion. So at any given point of time, I only have 11 sets of clothes. Like, for example, the shirt that you see me wearing, you will see it on at least 7 or 8 Instagram pictures, like if you scroll down. This year in February, I had bought a new cream sherwani, which I had worn for the Grammy Award ceremony when I won my 3rd one. And since then, I've worn that same sherwani for 40 concerts. So it also serves another purpose that besides, being responsible in terms of sustainability, it also serves another purpose that if I do a concert where I don't get a good picture, then I can use one from a previous concert, So, that, and then the second thing that I do is that I eat a meat-free diet. I'm an aspiring vegan, aspiring plant-based diet, but I found that very difficult, that path to be very difficult. So that's why right now I eat a meat-free diet. And that is a path that everybody has to follow for themselves because there's a huge cultural and traditional significance to this. So it's something that should not be forced on anybody. It's something that everybody should just have and make an informed decision on. And the third thing is that I do not own a car. I use public transportation, even in my own city. So I did this because previously, right up to 2013, I used to have 3 cars. And I was quite a car crazy guy. And the thing is that I started realizing that when I travel abroad, I use public transportation. So why not learn how to do that in my own city? So I started doing that. So I use the metros, I use buses. And of course, when needed, I use cab services in Bangalore, but I don't own a vehicle. And the last thing is that I get my carbon footprint audited every quarter. So everything from my ink usage to my paper usage, electricity, my air travel, my ground transportation, electricity usage at concerts, everything is basically measured by a firm. And then what we do is that we tabulate that every quarter, and then we have discussions as to how we can reduce our carbon footprint for the next quarter. And I mitigate that carbon footprint through tree plantations and through investment in renewable energy companies and startups. So these are the things that I follow. So and these are very simple things to follow, actually.
No, I think this is very inspirational, and I think to each person who becomes sensitive, I think that itself is a very powerful thing. We are trying to give an ISR score, basis the kind of water, the amount of water you consume, the amount of energy that you interact with, what you rightly mentioned, your carbon footprints, and things that you do, right? I think the moment we are able to, socialize that and, be able to see how people move, better on their score, and not only is it, something that the society can recognize, we can look at it, to work with government to incentivize people financially as well to do more of that. So I think there's a lot for us to do around just this one area of the individual, their choices, and the transformation that they can bring about, along with the right industry to support those choices, right? So what you rightly said, we need to build businesses in the future that will, have sustainability as a very core underlying, principle for what they represent and stand. And, we work closely with Gen Zs, right, through our digital platforms and products. And it's surprising that the amount of awareness that is getting built with that generation, and I'm sure with the Gen Alphas, those who are, 12, 13 years old today, they will take that forward, right? So over the next 25 years, we truly believe this transformation through the individual, can become a big one. And you're such a perfect representation, of that. Not only excellence at a global world-class level in your area of passion, but aligning that with the social cause, which is it is, the world's most important thing that we have to collectively address. Couldn't be a better combination. But, most people, Ricky, still love you for your music and, what you do. And, India has got young musicians everywhere, right? I mean, we see the competitions, right, from the bathroom singers to others. And many people are looking at a career, in this space and really want to make a difference. So maybe, our time has just run very fast, and maybe, this could be our last question. But if you were to give a message to the young aspiring musicians, who will shape their own lives and, their community and the environment from here on, what would that message be to the aspiring musicians?
So purely about music, I would say that young musicians in India, very often they feel that if they need international recognition, or international and global recognition is something that they crave for, they feel that they need to perform music in English, or they need to do English pop forms or English or Western hip hop forms of music and things like that, which I believe is not true at all, because the people who have actually gotten global recognition in India are people who actually were creating music which was based on Indian traditions. Like, for example, people like Pandit Ravi Shankar, Pandit Vishwa Mohan Bhatt, Pandit Hari Prasad Chaurasia, Ustad Ali Akbar Khan, Ustad Zakir Hussain, Ustad Allah Rakha, all of them. So I believe that if a musician craves for global recognition, then what they need to do is they need to actually dig deep into their own roots, and and figure out what is it that makes them uniquely Indian, and stay honest to yourself, as a person from India. And and create music based on that, or at least create music which is based on topics that are Indian, and or topics that surround them, rather than singing or creating topics which do not affect them at all. So I would say that this would be really important. And if you're honest and true to yourself and true to your musical forms and your heritage, then what happens is that you will get global recognition, because people see that honesty. Now, when it comes to audiences in India, I would say that because along with musicians, we also need music appreciators in India. And I would say that, in India, we suffer from something known as the Ravi Shankar syndrome. Now, this is something that I have coined, okay? It's called the Ravi Shankar syndrome, and I'll tell you what that is. Now, everybody knows who Pandit Ravi Shankar was. The great, you ask somebody who is Pandit Ravi Shankar, everybody knows that, okay, the greatest sitarist who ever lived, and one of the greatest musicians India ever had. Which major civilian honor did he win? Everybody knows the Bharat Ratna, he won that, the highest civilian honor possible. Who were his daughters? Most people will say Anushka Shankar, some people will say Nora Jones, so everybody knows that. You ask anybody, even in your office, you ask anybody, name one album of Pandit Ravi Shankar. And he's released over 60 albums. So name one album of Pandit Ravi Shankar, nobody can name an album. Or name a song of his, no. Or hum a tune of his, no. But at the same time, when you go to a place like San Francisco, I can challenge you, there's more people, or even the rest of America or European countries like Germany, or in Paris and places, or France and stuff like that. If you go there, I can challenge you that more people will be able to name albums and songs, or will know more about Pandit Ravi Shankar than people in India. And that is because we ourselves in the past, we've not been connected with our own roots. We've not been connected with what makes us uniquely Indian. We've not been connected with our traditional forms, and we have always been told that it's very uncool, for younger people to actually pick up a sitar or pick up a santoor or pick up a bansuri or something like that, or to play Indian traditional music. But now that is changing. I'm seeing that is changing exponentially right now, where a lot of my friends who have got children, they're picking up Indian instruments. They are learning Carnatic violin, they're learning the veena, they're learning the sitar, they're learning all of these instruments, because now it's suddenly becoming a lot more cooler. And that is because, in my opinion, it's a top-down approach, and that's because India is becoming so visible everywhere. Prime Minister Modi is becoming visible everywhere in the world, and India as a country is getting so much of respect and visibility everywhere that, that the door is opening for all of us. And all of us are sort of like, showcasing our pride of being Indian. And I think that needs to carry on more and more. And we will see a younger generation of people younger generation of artists and musicians who are proud of our own traditions and try to spread these traditions all over the world, because believe me, the world needs our traditions.
Yeah, no, I think very, very powerful words there from you, Ricky. And I think, talking of Pandit Ravi Shankar, the Ananta Aspen Center, which is a think tank, which is now based out of the Pandit Ravi Shankar Center in Delhi. I have just taken over as chairman of the Ananta Center from Jamshed Godrej. And
wonderful.
We're really seeing how to, bring young people, bring the world to come there. And in that ambience, really discuss, global issues, right? And I think you hit that so beautifully. The culmination of music plus global issues plus the individuality of people, right, will probably create that symphony that you mentioned, which is everybody playing to their strength, and really ensuring that they're true and honest to being able to deliver their best potential. And I'm sure when all of this falls together, we will have the Viksit Bharat of 2047, the dream India, that I think all of us really want to see shape the world, as we go over these next 25 years. And, it's just been such a lovely conversation, Ricky, with you. And we can go on hours and hours, but, I'm going to take you on some of these things, and really, look at your support as we continue to build this, by bringing multiple stakeholders, from the field of art, industry, government, academia, and everyone together to really be able to, shape this phenomenal outcome that we've been talking about, for the past 45 minutes. So again, thank you so much for taking the time, for, sharing some of these aspects of your vision and your learnings. And I look forward to shaping the future of India together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful speaking with you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Brian.